staff, the executive branch, judicial branch, and the legislative branch for all that they do, providing services to the people. Thankful for what's on the agenda today. Help us be able to make decisions that will be coming before us. Be with us in all that we do, and we're so thankful for help that we give to one another as far as the virus is concerned. It has hurt us in many ways. Still here with us on a limited basis, but we still have to care for ourselves and for those that are still suffering through it. Be with us that we might completely overcome it by taking care of ourselves and helping those that are still going through it, Father. Be with us in all that we do, and be with us that we might continue to provide the leadership that is required of us. Help us that we might do so with that help. We don't know all our people, and the only way that we can be able to discern is through that blessing. Help us that we might live in a way that God would always be with us in the things we need to take care of. Be with our veterans that they might be to cover from all that they went through. Those that are still in the military, that they might be safe, able to guide it, do what they have to do. Be with us, all that we do. Be with us now as we take care of the agenda, that we might do in a pleasing manner before thee. That's when the time comes that we might return to our homes in safety. Pray for these things humbly in the name of thy beloved Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Yeah, thank you for your thoughts as you put the prayer out there for everybody. Thank you for thinking of all the leadership and all the way down to chapter level and all the employees of the Navajo Nation. Yeah. Committee members, do we have any announcements? There are no announcements, then we go to recognizing guests and visiting officials. So all the folks on the call, please introduce yourself, and Mr. Mose keeps a listing of all the ones that introduced themselves and even the ones that remain silent.
Chair, so this is Derek Franklin from Office of President and Vice President.
Mr. Franklin.
Chair, so this is Karen Malone from the Navajo BIE. I am the Acting Associate Deputy Director.
Good morning. This is Levita Miestas with the Department of Education, Office of DNA Accountability and Compliance.
Good morning. This is Dr. Jim with Navajo Department of Health.
Good morning. This is Matthew So with the Department of Genetics Education Administration.
Good morning, Chairman So and HES Committee. This is Emily Arvizo, Special Assistant, BIE Navajo.
Good morning. This is Brent Nelson with Department of Education Technology Department.
Good morning. This is Jamie Lowry
with ODSI.
Good morning, Chair, committee members. This is Michelle Morris from Navajo Department of Health.
Anybody else?
Let's do a prayer and then it's just it's all up there. You have to get your own fork and knife. Let me.
Okay, let's proceed if there's no other introductions. With that, Ms. Angelita Benali, Legislative Advisor, could you review the proposed agenda with the committee?
Yes, Mr. Chair, good morning. Health, Education, and Human Services Committee members. You have your proposed agenda. The Health, Education, and Human Services Committee, 24th Navajo Nation Council, regular meeting, March 30th, 2022 at 10 a.m. Presiding the Honorable Daniel E. So, Chairperson, the Honorable Carl R. Slater, Vice Chairperson. Places of via telecommunications, Window Rock, Navajo Nation, Arizona. 1, call meeting to order, roll call, invocation, announcements. 2, recognize guests and visiting officials. 3, review and adopt the agenda. 4, reviewing and adopt journals for March 23rd, 2022. 5, reports. A is a presentation, the new curriculum initiative with the Bureau of Indian Education, BIA. It's the ELMS implementation at Bureau Operated Schools, new curriculum framework and instruction initiative at Bureau of Indian Education Schools in the Navajo area, educating Navajo students and or on the Navajo Nation. And the second report is the BIE mandatory background checks for school board members. A memorandum was sent on March 21st, 2022 by BIE. Presenters are the Bureau of Indian Education, Dr. Maureen Lesky, Program Manager, ELMS Initiative, Ms. Karen Malone, Acting Associate Deputy Director, and Emily Arvizo, Special Assistant for BIE Navajo Nation. And invited but had declined is Dr. Walter Coulter, the Acting Education Program Administrator for Navajo Bureau Operated Schools. And B is a report, the current operations update with Baka Golonyaja Community Schools. Presenter is Ms. Bianca Alexander, Principal for Baka Golonyaja Community Schools, BIE. C is a report by the Tuba City Regional Healthcare Corporations, Tuba City Navajo Nation, funding to develop a long-term care and skilled nursing services, and support for the existing cancer treatment center receiving $8 million through the remainder of FY22. Presenters Lynette Bonar, CEO, Tuba City Regional Healthcare Corporation. D is a report by Navajo Department of Health Administration, FY22, 2022, condition of appropriation and legislative concerns per resolution CS-49-21. And it's the NDOH report on SC-49-21 legislative concerns and DOH administration. DOH should ensure all DOH legal settlements, liabilities, and interest payments related hereto are fully and timely paid to claimants as approved and directed by DOJ. By the end of the second quarter, FY 2022, the director should provide a report to Health, Education, and Human Services Committee regarding such payout and ongoing liabilities, if any. Presenters are Ms. Charlotte Francis, Senior Management Analyst with the Navajo Department of Health, and Dr. Jill Jim, Executive Director for the Navajo Department of Health. And the second report is Doltech. Doltech should prepare a report explaining FY 2021 funding shortfalls for utility payments, trash removal, and food shortages at Doltech's operated senior centers, as well shortfalls for sufficient insurance coverage for Doltech's operated vehicles. This report should be presented to the Health, Education, Human Services Committee by the end of the second quarter FY 2022. Presenters are Ms. Valerie Jones, Health Services Administrator for Doltech, and Dr. Jill Jim, Executive Director, Navajo Department of Health. 6, new business. A is legislation number 0048-22, an action relating to the Resource and Development, Health, Education, and Human Services, Budget and Finance, and the Navajo committees, and the Navajo Nation Council, allocating $29,216,453 to CSN funds to Navajo Land Nursing Homes Incorporated for the construction and operation of a veterans nursing home, approving the, in quotations, Navajo Warriors Home Expenditure Plan, close quote. Pursuant to 12 NNC Section 2501 to 2508. Sponsor is Delegate Carl R. Slater. Co-sponsors are Delegates Daniel Lee So, Edison J. Winnica, Key Allen Begay Jr., Nathaniel Brown, Paul Begay, Ricky Nez, Vince R. James, Wilson, and Wilson Stewart Jr. 7, old business none. 8, close of meeting announcements, adjournment, and next meeting. Mr. Chair. Also, Mr. Chair and members of the Health, Education, and Human Services Committee, I did send out an email indicating that Ms. Bianca Alexander, principal of Baca Yaja Community School, is not available to present today or this morning. And also, I did receive a message from the Tuba City Regional Healthcare Corporation that Ms. Lynette Bonar, CEO, is still on travel and is not available to present, but she's requesting to present on April 13th to Health, Education, and Human Services Committee. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Benali. Committee members?
Motion, Wanika.
Second, that was it.
With
Okay.
those, moving those other 2 reports to next meeting.
Kokoshila. Motion to amend the agenda that was read into the record to remove 2 reports to the next regular meeting. The Chair, Honorable Paul Begay, do you concur?
Yes, I do concur. Thank you.
Oh, so committee members, we have a modified agenda. Any discussion? If not, Mr. Mose. Hey.
Yes,
Roll
sir.
call vote, please.
Yes, sir. Good morning, everyone. Honorable Paul Begay Jr.
That was the Begay votes green.
Honorable Paul Begay Jr. votes green. Honorable Pernell Halona. Honorable Pernell Halona. Honorable Carl Russell Slater.
Green.
Honorable Carl Russell Slater votes green. Honorable Charlene So. Honorable Edison J. Wanika. Green. Honorable Edison J. Wanika votes green. Honorable Pernell Halona.
Green.
Honorable Pernell Halona votes green. Honorable Charlene So. Carry a vote of 4 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you, Mr. Mose. Let the record show a vote of 4 in favor, 0 opposed, 1 committee unable to log on, and the chair not voting. With that, let's go to item number 4. Ms. Benali.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Item number 4 on the adopted agenda for the Health, Education, and Human Services Committee is for review and adopted journals. It's for March 23rd, 2022. Mr. Chair.
Motion, Helena?
Thank you. Honorable Helena motions to adopt the journal for March 23. Second by Honorable Edison Wanika. Any discussion, committee members? Not, let's go to the vote. Mr. Mose.
Yes, sir. Honorable Paul Begay Jr.
Paul Begay votes green.
Paul Begay Jr. votes green. Honorable Pernell Zelona.
Paul votes green.
Pernell Zelona votes green. Honorable Carl Russell Slater.
Carl Slater, green.
Honorable Carl Russell Slater votes green. Honorable Charlene So. Honorable Charlene So. Honorable Edison J. Wanika. Green. Honorable Edison J. Wanika votes green. Honorable Charlene So. Chair, a vote of 4 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you, committee members. 4 in favor, 0 opposed, the chair not voting. Let's go to item number 5, 5A, Miss Angelita Benali.
Mr. Chair and members of the Health, Education, and Human Services Committee, 5A is a presentation on the new curriculum initiative by the Bureau of Indian Education. And one will be the ELMS implementation at Bureau operated schools. And it'll be the new curriculum framework and instruction initiative at Bureau of Indian Education schools in the Navajo area, educating Navajo students and or on the Navajo Nation. And the second is the BIE mandatory background checks for school board members. A memorandum was sent on March 21st, 2022. And I resent that memorandum this morning for your reference. The presenters are Ms. Maureen, or Dr. Maureen Lesky, Program Manager of the ELMS Initiative, and Ms. Carol Malone, Acting District Superintendent, along with Ms. Emily Riso, the Special Assistant for Navajo BIE area. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Dr. Lesky, are you on the call?
Hi, good morning. I am on the call.
Yeah, you have the teleconference floor to present. Thank you.
May I present some slides?
Okay.
Or do you prefer that I read off of them?
Mr. Chair, the share screen is available for Dr. Lesky.
All right.
Do the share screen as well, and then send the PowerPoint presentation.
Will do. And who do I send the PowerPoint to?
Miss Angelita Benali, Legislative Advisor.
Angelita Benali. Okay. I will get that email address. Okay, so welcome everyone. I'm going to stop my video while I am presenting. So this is a brief high-level overview of the Education Learning Management System. And I'm Maureen Lesky in BIE, Office of the Director. So I wanted to clarify some of the terminology that you will hear. The Bureau of Indian Education is implementing a strategic transformation of education plan. We call it the STEP project. And our vision statement is to improve educational outcomes by empowering students, families, educators, and administrators through innovation. And the three major initiatives of the STEP project are the adoption of a learning management system, and that's what we're referring to as the ELMS. It is a tool, it is an online tool, and we'll provide a definition in the next slides. So the first, I'm sorry. Okay, the first goal is the adoption. I'm sorry, there was some background noise.
Yes, for all the folks on the call, please put your phone on mute. Miss Dr. Lesky has the teleconference floor. Thank you.
Thank you. The first goal is to adopt a ELMS, which is the online tool for Bureau operated schools, and then as an option for tribally controlled schools. The second goal is to implement sustainable infrastructure and connectivity to support the initiative. And then the third goal is to establish communities of practice, which is basically a mechanism for fostering continuous improvement and collaboration, or teams, or ways to engage. What is a community of practice? So the definition is a group of people that share a common interest for something they do. And then the vision for the ELMS communities of practice. The vision is to build capacity and self-advocacy skills, to attain knowledge and skills through professional experiences, sharing best practices, and engagement and collaboration. How does ELMS support the vision? So the tool is geared to support enhancing education while leveraging learning techniques and digital content, integrating face-to-face classroom practices with digital learning. So in other words, utilizing this in face-to-face or in-person instruction, hybrid instruction, remote instruction, empowering students and teachers through digital learning resources to improve educational outcomes. Students can look forward to improved engagement, increased opportunities, educational opportunities, student-centered experiences, increased academic achievement, and always our goal is to improve college and career readiness and self-advocacy for students, families, and the community. So we have several users that the ELMS will impact. We have the administrators at the school. We're hoping this tool will enable communications, records, assessments, and standards in one platform. And then teachers, this tool will help streamline their administrative tasks and communication, promote individual, group, and differentiated learning. And then for students, having up-to-date resources, instruction, digital learning, and creating more opportunities for growth and improvement. And then families being able to communicate with the schools through a parent portal that will enhance collaboration and opportunities. This project is supported by various contractors. You will hear different names. Raj Technologies Incorporated, we refer to them as RTI, is the primary contractor, and that is for acquiring the Schoology platform. Schoology is the actual tool. Power School recently acquired Schoology as well as other applications. So you'll hear all three names. And then we also work with a vendor called Aero Alliance that is supporting with training, communications, and policy development. How is ELMS different from NACIS? So we have received a lot of questions about what is the difference, and just very briefly and simply, NACIS is our student record system. It's where official grades, attendance, class schedules are kept. And the ELMS is a web-based application that enables content to be delivered so that teachers can post assignments and students can submit assignments to teachers, and then also enhance communication between students, teachers, and families. So one is a system of record, the other is a application to deliver course content. So we are implementing this in a phased approach. The phased approach, phase one, the implementation, the goal is to begin August 1st with 4 schools: Baklabato, Tohono O'odham, Taos, Wingate Elementary. And then in the continued implementation of phase one through the end of the calendar year are 8 more schools listed there: Aneth, Baca, Red Springs, Lake Valley, Pine Ridge, San Ildefonso, Zia, and Tonalea. And then this pilot is really necessary since it's something new. We want to work out all of the technical issues before we roll it out in a larger audience. So we want to make sure that we have addressed all of the any of the online issues, because it will interface in some way with NACIS in terms of courses, etc. Not everything, but they will be able to talk to each other. The applications will be able to talk to each other in some way. So there's a lot of behind the scenes technical aspects that we want to make sure are working before we roll it out to a larger group. So that's our first phase, and those schools are all, they've volunteered for the project. And then the phase 2 and phase 3, we are working with the ADDs and the EPAs to determine the next phase, the list of the schools for phase 2 and phase 3. All right, and then what's the difference between implementation and transformation? So the ELMS is a tool, and just like any other tool, it's only as good as the usage of it. And so we like to make the comparison between the tool is available versus there's been a transformation, which is in the title of the STEP project, that will mean the process of integrating the application the strategies and to support the teachers through training to set benchmarks and goals and really utilize the tool to the fullest to get positive educational outcomes. All right, and I did, before I take questions, I did want to also clarify that the ELMS, it is not a new curriculum. It is a platform where curriculum can be, where it can be stored and accessed by the teachers so that it can help them with their lesson plans, help them post lessons to students. So this project is not developing new curriculum, but it is a place where curriculum can be stored. And it's also a place where the standards can be housed and aligned with the curriculum. So I just wanted to make that clarification. And now I'm available for questions.
Chair?
Thank you, Dr. Lesky. Honorable Vice Chair Slater, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for the presentation. I think I may have missed this, but is this only going to be for the BIE direct administration schools?
So the first phase schools are Bureau operated. And the reason for that is because BIE cannot dictate the platform that tribally controlled schools utilize. Now we will make it available to tribally controlled schools after the pilot and the phase 1 schools, but it will not be mandated. It will not be mandated to tribally controlled schools. BIE cannot, again, dictate the platform or, as tribally controlled schools, equipment, infrastructure, inventories, etc. So that's how we came about with getting volunteers from Bureau operated schools for the pilot.
Chair, can I ask a follow-up?
Yes.
Vice Chair Slater, you certainly can. Go ahead.
Thank you. So did you only solicit for participation from Bureau operated schools for the pilot side? And second, are there specific hardware requirements that are much different than what exists in Bureau operated and tribally controlled schools that may be a hindrance in deployment? And what sort of training time frame to get people up to speed on how to use it do you anticipate there being? I guess lastly or second to last, when this gets deployed in Baklabato this summer, I think it'd be great if the committee could go and visit the school and see with the Bureau how this is actually going to be implemented in the school. I would certainly appreciate that, whether it's the committee or just myself. And I'm sure the delegate from there would also appreciate that. Lastly, in my district, District 11, we have Rough Rock, Rock Point, and Mukachukai, and those are all tribally controlled schools. So I don't know if there's an opportunity to gauge their interest or if you've already reached out directly to them, but I'd be interested in seeing how they could test out this technology and see if it would be relevant for implementation in their schools. Thank you.
All right. You may have to remind me about all of those questions. I'll try to remember. So I believe for the pilot, the Bureau operated schools were contacted for the pilot project. I do know that several schools are already using Schoology, and because of the procurement process, we were not we were not able to name a particular tool until the procurement process was fully complete. So when Schoology was awarded, then we were able to name that tool. So I do know there are other schools using Schoology, and we are trying to get that information as well. But for the pilot, it was Bureau operated schools that were contacted. And starting with the 4 schools, the infrastructure or the equipment needed, it is cloud-based online. So the bandwidth at the school will be a factor. So we're also working with the BIA technology department to determine the bandwidth at different schools. And then I forgot what your other questions were. I apologize.
Asking if the committee could go to Baklabato, I think, did you say it was this summer in August when it's going to be deployed, and see the implementation or the training for it? And then I wanted to know what the time frame is for training at the schools to get the staff and administration and the teachers up to speed in using it. And then lastly, I just mentioned that I have 3 schools in my district, and once you mentioned Schoology, I think 2 of them already use it. I'm not sure about the 3rd.
Okay. So the timeline, the award to Schoology was made, it was made, I'm going to say about 4 weeks ago. We've just had our kickoff meeting about 3 weeks ago with Schoology. So we are actually, I left a implementation meeting to join this call this morning with RTI, and we were just discussing training and how to roll that out and training dates. So there will be a rollout, a training calendar. It has not been established yet, but obviously we want to have training rolled out between now and before and up to August 1st for the go live date of the beginning of school for the 4 schools. In terms of can you attend, I'm not sure if I'm the person to coordinate that, but perhaps the ADDs and the other folks can assist with that question.
Thank you, Dr. Lesky. Ms. Karen Malone?
Yes,
And
we would
Ms.
be happy. We would be
Go
happy
ahead.
to invite the HES committee to one of our implementation meetings where the school is utilizing the ELMS. And I will keep you informed on that.
Thank you. Ms. Malone. Vice Chair Slater, your questions answered?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And we do have Mr. Matthew So and Ms. Maestas. Ms. Maestas, do you have information on whether any of the tribal control schools are using Spotify? I think that's the proper word.
Thank you,
Seems
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
At the moment, no, we're not aware of any of our grant contract schools utilizing this program. And this is the first time I'm hearing about the program, that the initiative. But I can go ahead and reach out to the schools to see and provide that information. Thank you.
Thank you. Committee members, any other questions? Okay. We'll see how it rolls out in August.
All right.
Miss Malone, in regard, so you'll be having some presentations with the topic administration, faculty, and staff before it's rolled out at the school. Is there the chance that the committee could participate or observe those presentations?
Yes, that's a possibility once the training has been established.
Okay, great. Thank you. All righty. Committee members, anything else? If not, thank you, Dr. Leonard. Then we'll move on to Part B of the report.
Chair, this is Leonard.
Oh.
Sorry for interrupting. I have Shauna Allison Vicente who wants to make a comment. She has her hand raised.
Oh. Thank you, Ms. Vicente, for joining the call. Go ahead. You have the teleconference floor. Vicente.
Ms. Vicente, *6, you're still muted.
Anybody else?
Chairman, so this is Brent Nelson with Department of Education, IT Department.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes. Thank you again, Chairman So, and then also good morning to the Health, Education, and Human Services Committee, and then also thank you to Dr. Lasky for the presentation on the ELMS. In terms of the contract or the tribally controlled schools, if they should opt to use the application, the subscription services that are required to support this ELMS, will that be taken care of by BIA or BIE, or would that be on the tribally controlled schools to provide those subscription services and any ongoing support and maintenance of the application?
Hello. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Nelson.
Go ahead.
So what we would need to do, and I can check on that for you, is we can modify our contract and see if there are available funds for additional subscriptions. And I would have to check on that before I gave a final answer. I know we are asking what contracts are currently out there. We've asked Power School, who bought out Schoology. We're asking Power School to provide information on current contracts they may have with BIE. And I'm supposed to get that information very soon. So we'll take a look at that and see what the interest is, and then I can provide a final answer.
Thank you again, Dr. Lesky. And I have one more question, Dr. Lesky. You know, with across tribal communities, and especially here in Navajo, you know, we are still in a challenge situation regarding to broadband connectivity. A lot of our schools, particularly our tribally controlled schools, are still lacking connectivity, decent connectivity to their school sites. Based on you know, what you had presented regarding the e-learning system and delivering assessments and delivering course content via the internet, you know, how was that all included in this assessment and planning as you were rolling out the application, or how's that? How does that look for those areas that our students are having issues with connectivity, and then also our schools that are having issues with the same at the school site? I know that when you're pushing content across the connectivity, you know, the packages could be quite large. And then also if you're doing video content, you know, that those require a decent connectivity. So I'm kind of curious to hear a little bit more on how that's also being assessed with this rollout. Thank you.
Dr. Lesky?
Yes, so thank you for that question, the follow-up question. So just a disclaimer, I'm not an IT person, but I can speak to some of your question. We are looking at infrastructure. We are working with BIA. I think this committee is aware that BIE does not have any IT positions, and that we rely on BIA for IT support. So we have been in communication with BIA on this project, and during our site visits, we do bring a IT person with us to do a walkthrough assessment of the infrastructure and double check on the bandwidth. And we know that there are many issues and challenges with the infrastructure, the equipment, and the bandwidth. So I know that we are taking that into consideration and helping with the coordination with BIA services as much as we can. And like I said, I don't have specific IT background, but I can say we are collaborating with BIA IT.
Thank you again, Dr. Lesky, for those responses. And I'd be more interested maybe on a offline call to get a little bit more specifics on these rollouts. And our main concern, and this is just from our experience with the pandemic, a lot of our schools were challenged to deploy ELMS applications, not only within Bureau funded schools, but also with our public education entities. And you know, we have some broadband initiatives that are taking place within the nation here on Navajo. there are also BIA proposals to expand broadband services in its education community. So I'd be interested in seeing how this rollout would support those initiatives, because it's going to be very important. I mean, we could roll out an application, but you're still going to there's still going to be issues in terms of students connecting from home, because right now a lot of our homes don't have decent connectivity. A lot of families are still sheltered at home. There's been some subsidy programs that have been offered over the past through the pandemic to help these families get their students online. So that'd be probably one of the other questions I would have is, is there going to be any support from this initiative, and maybe even working with BIA to provide some sort of better connectivity for our students and I guess our teachers too, as we're rolling out these online applications. So just wanted to provide that input and appreciate any feedback even after the meeting, and I'll go ahead and put my info in the chat box if it's available. But if not, then I do have your information. I'll be in contact. Thank you.
Thank you. And I definitely appreciate those comments and have taken note of that. So when I work with the IT folks in BIA, I can also gather more information.
Thank you, Dr. Lesky. Committee members, out of the folks on the call, I did participate in that visit at Baca, as a community school, and at that visit, it was there was a BIA IT person, as well as facilities folks evaluating the needs of the Baca Community School. And in meeting with Tony Dearman and the BIE staff on the call, each of the schools that are listed to start have already gone through that same similar evaluation. And at Bach, it was particularly noted that 5 homes where students from which students attend Baca Bronyaja didn't have electrical service. And so that was one of the things that was going to be addressed as far as the current student enrollment. And hopefully with going forward, and that was within the Casimiro Lake community. So hopefully with the work with the Continental Divide Electrical Co-op, we can include them in that power line project expenditure plan. Committee members,
Yate
any
Chair,
follow-up?
oh, sorry. Yate Chair, this
Go
is
ahead.
Shauna. I finally have my mute. I finally figured it out to unmute.
Oh, we thought you were waving to say, I'm back from Washington, D.C.
Yeah, I apologize, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. I just wanted to share just a quick, maybe a support statement. Navajo Prep, when we transitioned, we had already, we're going to transition to an LMS system when we decided to go one-to-one devices pre-pandemic. And we did invest in Schoology, and we have been operating Schoology since 2019. And there are some really major issues with syncing with NASIS, with the syncing issues with the Infinite system that the BIE uses for reporting of attendance. And it does not help when teachers submit grades in a Schoology, and if the grades aren't then syncing to NACIS, it overwhelms teachers. So we also have some best practices. We had to invest in additional add-ons with NACIS program with the Infinite Visions. And our IT definitely knows and even we had to even hire kind of a Schoology support teacher person because there is a lot of little issues with Schoology and really setting up a strong foundational expectation and format for it. Sorry. So I put it out there that Navajo Prep has really worked with the program. Our students, we're 100% utilizing Schoology. Now we're getting into utilizing the assessment. That's kind of our next, our next growth area, because it's so big. It's Infinite Campus. Thank you, Matt, for that. It is Infinite Campus that we use. That's basically NACIS. And it would be nice, and I've already put this out to the BIE, if we can transition to Power School instead of Infinite Campus, but that they said that's at the federal level, but I really would advocate for it because Infinite Campus is daunting, the reporting of it. If you really want Schoology to work and not stress your teachers out, there has to be a strong syncing program, and the BIE needs to invest money into all the add-ons so that reporting can happen. But I have a team who knows it inside and out that I offer our suggestions, recommendations, support. We're improving with Schoology every day. The local schools around us, Farmington, they've been implementing Schoology probably since 2017 or so. So there are schools around us that utilize Schoology. So I just offer that to you, Ms. Lusky. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vicente. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you for the input, Ms. Vicente. My guess is that would conclude the presentation on first part of the report. Okay. Previously, I had said it was Spotify, but it's Schoology. Looking at other phone apps was wrong. With that, Ms. Malone, could you then do the presentation on the BIE mandatory background checks, school board?
Thank you, Chair. I have invited Mr. Jackie Shamblin, who is our Human Resource Officer, to address the Dear Tribal letter on school board background checks. Mr. Shamblin, are you on?
Okay. Is he on the call?
I see his name. Yes, he's on. We can't hear you, Mr. Shamblin.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. Thank you.
Passcode :865. OTEP 4, unavailable, Untitled Chapter, Microsoft Edge, Escape, Inbox -. unread, FW:PA/CAP. Unread, registration confirmed -PA/and the Native American, unread, registration confirmed, enter. Registration graphic order, blank, dear Osby, your registration for the PA/CAP 2022 virtual annual conference has been confirmed. We are excited you will be joining us for the conference. Please save this email for future.
Are you able to share, Mr. Shamblin?
Oh, I was hearing somebody else talk or something, so I was just holding.
Mr. Shamblin, you have the teleconference floor. The others are folks that need to put their systems on mute.
Yes, sir. Right off the bat, Director Dearman sent out a Dear Tribal letter earlier this month that outlined that we're no longer going to do a blanket, all positions, all school boards require background investigation. So the new they want us to follow is a case-by-case analysis. If a school board or the tribe doesn't feel the school board should actually have a background requirement, there's a checklist that was developed that would look at contact or control of Native American children, and the security staff would actually have to do an analysis of the functions using, if it's a bureau operated school, they would utilize the 62 BIM 11, the school board's charter and their bylaws, and have a discussion with the principal or EPA and the school board to answer a few questions. And that would be how they would determine whether or not the school board needed to have a background relative to contact with or control of Native American children. Is there specific questions that anyone has regarding the Dear Tribal letter or any steps going forward? I know BIE Security has reached out trying to get copies of all of the bylaws and charters for all the school boards.
Thank you, Shamblin. So in the bottom line, it seems like you're going to take it on a case-by-case basis. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, sir. They have to do an analysis of each school board should actually have a charter and bylaws. And in the 62 BIM 11, it has certain criteria in there that specifically outlines some of the duties and responsibilities of the school boards and some of the interactions, in their positions they would have with school leadership and their functions. So that's all looked at, but it will be a case-by-case basis. The security staff started reaching out early last week, trying to get copies of the school board bylaws and charters. I know it's a lot to ask. I mean, they're dealing with 130 tribally controlled schools as well as 53, bureau operated schools. So it is a lot they're looking at, but it will be a case-by-case basis, looking at the functions and everything like that. We've actually received some policy information from several of the tribes where they actually have a policy on record that they actually require backgrounds for all their school board members. I believe Navajo Nation was actually one such where y'all have a policy on record that actually stipulates that school board members will have a background investigation.
Mr. Shamblin. This
Yes,
is,
sir.
Chair Daniel. So I guess the perhaps some background information, foundational information that precipitated the this higher level of background clearance.
In 2017, the BIE was audited by the Office of Inspector General. And part of their findings, and I'm willing to share the report. I don't think there's anything in it other than where they pointed out, they said we wasn't doing our job or our due diligence about reviewing school board members or tribally controlled schools on the background requirements. So that was a finding back in 2017 by the Office of Inspector General. So we put a corrective action plan in place and started reviewing everything and worked with them to try to close out all their findings regarding the backgrounds. And that's how we've actually come to this point is we put a blanket across saying, you know, school boards are part of the school process with students and staff at the schools. We felt in HR that it was an automatic thing, but our legal team reviewed it and said we cannot do a blanket like that because of what's in 25 CFR Part 63. They said we were required to either have the tribe identify the school board as requiring a background requirement or a background investigation, or we had to do an individualized assessment of each school board to determine that. So, but it all started because of that 2017 Office of Inspector General report where they found BIE not meeting our requirements as the trustee in doing our backgrounds and our background compliance.
Mr. Chair, this is Ms. Maestas.
Go ahead, Ms. Maestas.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a suggestion. If BIE could work with myself and Mr. Matthews, so in regards to this area of concern, and that's what I'd like to suggest.
Ms. Maestas, as part of the election qualification, the nation requires a background check. And I guess the main question is the level of scrutiny that the BIE is requesting. Mr. Shamblin also. Are they two different levels?
No, sir. The background that BIE does for our school staff and our school boards is actually considered a SAC, which is the lowest level that we actually do.
And so, Mr. Chair, in regards to the qualification for our Navajo school board, they have specific out a bit more stringent compared to what BIE has.
Ms. Maestas, would you repeat
Yes, thank you again, Mr. Chair. I stated that in regards to the requirements of our Navajo school boards based on their qualifications, meeting their qualifications, we're a little bit more stringent compared to what BIE has in place when it comes to background checks. And we also go back as far as their 18th birthday to current. And the qualification clearly identifies a number of requirements that they should not have violated. So we're a little more stringent when it comes to background checks with our school board members. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Shamblin, at the presentation that Tony Dearman made back on March 7th, you're requiring that this background check occur every 5 years, as I recall?
That's what we do for the federal employees, sir. But by the 25 CFR Part 63, we cannot hold, the tribal schools to that. It just says they have to complete one at the initial. It's recommended to do it every 5 years, but per the CFR Part 63, we can't hold you to that. We do it for all of our employees, government-wide. It's a government-wide requirement, but that specific requirement was not part of the 63, 25 CFR Part 63. So that's not something I can tell you we can require. We do recommend it because people do stuff throughout, the year and stuff comes up. But when we come out and do our reviews on the Bureau operated schools or the tribally controlled schools, we're looking to see that the school board actually completed a background check, after they were appointed. Now, if they leave their appointment and come back in, 5 or 10 years later, it would be a new appointment. We would initiate a background again if that position required a background. But if that individual stayed in a position on a school board and did an initial investigation, honestly, we can't require it. We would recommend it, but we cannot require that.
Mr. Chair, this is my Estes again.
Go ahead, Ms. Maestas.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Typically, what our office has been doing in the past is specifically with our grant and contract schools, all our grant and contract schools, there are school board members that are scheduled to take their oath. We used to notify them and then schedule during the day of their oath before they pick up their certification. They used to come through us and we would give them all the ample information that they need to fill out to acquire a background check. And also fingerprinted and collected the fee. So that would be in process at that time. And meantime, with our Bureau funded schools, we were always was conducting background checks on those school boards and following through at that time. And it's been just fairly recent that it has surfaced to say that school boards have not been going through their background checks. So, and with our grant and contract schools, what we typically do is when there's new elections, every 4 years is new elections, and then that's when all our board members, whether they're returning boards or new boards, they normally go through the same process again to reacquire a background check for the reason that within 4 years, you don't know if there were any charges in the process when it comes to our grant and contract schools board members. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chair, this is Jackie Shamlin again. I would love for my security staff to work with Ms. Maestas and her staff on this because it would make it so much easier for us to work with them on this. I mean, we would love to do the reinvestigations, but unfortunately, our legals told me that I cannot require the reinvestigations after we do an initial. But if that's something that Navajo Nation is requiring, if I could get a copy of that requirement, then we could actually enforce that requirement. It's just per the 25 CFR Part 63, legal said that is not defined in there and I'm not allowed to require it, even though we do it for all federal employees. School board positions are not considered federal employees. So I would love for my staff to work with Ms. Maestas and her staff on the background process.
Ms. Maestas, and what you're relaying to the group here, folks on the call, is irregardless of whether they're BIE advisory school board members or contract and grant schools, each of those school board members through DOTI, in compliance with DOTI and the election laws, each of those elected school board members submit forms for and pay fees for their background check. Is that what you're relaying to everybody on the call?
Yes, they should be. Like I mentioned earlier, grant and contract schools, we usually set up a table for them, and that happens. And then the other bureau schools, they were supposed to work with their HRs to get their background checks at the school level. And we're also open, like I mentioned, we're open to work with the BIE security office, myself and Mr. Matt. So we're open to that. Thank you.
Chair.
Oh, Cecilia, Honorable Edison Winika, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. I'm concerned about this. I think what we need to do is we need to look at this again. I think we need to have a discussion because I know it's always been a concern of communities and those people that run for school board. One of the areas that I don't like is as far as background checks, there's no limit to that. For other positions, it says within the last 5 years, but with the school board, there's no limit. If they violated any laws or whatever when they were teenagers or whatever, it goes back to that. And I don't think we should do that because people amend their ways, align their lives. And so I think we pretty much went through that process ourselves. And so I think we need to relook at this. Then I think making this a policy, I think the federal government, as far as the schools are concerned, I think it says employees and volunteers. I think school boards will put in that category as volunteers. They're not volunteers, they're elected officials. So I really think we need to relook at this. And then school boards don't work directly with the students. It's the teachers and volunteers that work directly with the students, not school boards. Very seldom do school boards go into the classrooms and all that. For that reason, I think we need to look at this again. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Edison Winika. Do we have Ms. Benali? Could you provide us some guidance and perhaps you yourself could participate in the meeting with Mr. Shamblin and Mr. So and Ms. Maestas.
Mr. Chair and members of the Health, Education, and Human Services Committee, I believe that from what I understand, the Navajo Nation has a higher standard of background check than what the BIE is requiring. Although I haven't looked at what, and then that's according to what Ms. Maestas is conveying. And I do believe that a meeting between the two offices would be productive. And if they let me know when they're going to be doing a meeting, I can also provide the Zoom information between the two offices as well, so that it'll provide a meeting and a virtual meeting entity for them. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Benali. And I guess the main thing that I'm picking up from Honorable Wanika's concern is, on the one hand, it seems like for a school board member through BIE is the background check only goes to 5 years back. Whereas, as Ms. Maestas relayed, that background check goes all the way back to when person 18 to the current age. And what Honorable Wanika is saying is there may have some charges. There might be some items that happen in the early years, but in the later years, after a certain level of maturity was attained, then their records are clean. And so I think Honorable Wanika is saying we got to look at that particular, I don't know if it's a policy aspect or whether we would have to amend the law. And I don't remember reading in the election laws or that the background check would be. And that's where I'm asking right now for clarification. Is it a policy matter, Ms. Maestas?
Mr. Chair, yes, it is. And we'll have we will have the policies based on the 25 CFR requirements, and also based on the decision that the Navajo Nation Council had approved. So those are the two different the federal and the tribal is a combination of what's being implemented at this time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chair, this is Jackie Shamblin. I need to clarify something if I could.
Mr. Shamblin, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Our backgrounds go back till their 18th birthday. What I was saying about the 5 years is you have to have a reinvestigation every 5 years as a federal employee. We cannot require that reinvestigation like Ms. Maestas and her staff do for the new terms if they get reelected into the same position. Our legal told us we could not require an additional investigation for school boards unless they leave the office and then come back in. So if you have somebody that sits in on a school board for 10 years, they would only do that initial investigation with us because the 25 CFR Part 63 doesn't allow me to require that. The tribe can require it, but it doesn't allow me to require that. And that requirement to go back to the 18th birthday or even earlier is actually in the Child Protection Act. So it's actually in federal law as well as, the Navajo policy. And I'm done, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
And,
Thank
and
you
Mr.
for further
I'm sorry, Mr.
clarification.
Chair, this is Ms. Maestas.
Go ahead.
And then the nation also took a stand to also stand by the Indian Child Protection Act as well too. So that also plays in all these requirements. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess back to that March 7th visit to Bacadoniosa, the main objection was they were being imposed to have a second background check. Basically, the boards were, members were saying we already did one with Navajo Nation. Now BIE is requiring the second one. And so
Chair.
going forward, yes, when Ms. Maestas and Mr. Shamblin collaborate, then there would be further clarification. And hopefully from that would come out with some guidance to the school boards, the members themselves. But what I'm hearing is that a review of their charter and bylaws has to occur.
Chair, this is Jackie Shamlin. Can I address that?
Go ahead.
When we meet with Ms. Maestas and her staff, the collaboration would be wonderful, because if the school boards are already doing the background through them, all we would have to do is verify that. And if we can verify that and get a copy showing that they do have a cleared background, they would not have to do another background through us, and vice versa. If we had a current background on somebody and Ms. Maestas' staff needed it because they were going to a tribally operated school board, we could, share as well. But they only have to do one as long as we can verify it.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if the members of the Bacadoniosa Community School Board are on the call. I'm sure they'll be glad to hear that. Most especially George Tove. Okay, going forward.
Thank you, Che. Mr. Tolter.
Oh, hey, Che. Kind of, my ears was singing.
Che. Oh, yeah, Che. Appreciate it. Thank you.
So we got good directions, Che. There'll be collaboration, and I'm sure the BIE will come back and give you the status also, as well as Ms. Maestas. What, Ayla? Committee members, any other questions, discussion? With that, the chair is open to a motion to accept the reports, the two reports.
Shana, Melvin Harrison with IMBOs.
Hang on just a minute. I'm calling for a motion. Was that Honorable Carl Slater that made the motion?
Yes, Chair.
Oh, Hogasinla, Chair recognizes the motion.
Second, Winika.
Second by Honorable Edison Winika. So now, Mr. Melvin Harrison.
Yeah, I'd just like to make a request. Yat Eshananta, Yat Eshana, Chair So, Arashiche, Delegate Slater, Do Shana, Delegate Wanika, Ado, just now, Ash, Pernell, Holana. I don't know who else is online, but just like to make a request on this meeting between BIE and Doty. I'd like to request that the election office be involved in this meeting as well. I think it's important that we listen in, and because I think it would provide us good information on Title 11, how the school board is addressing and so forth around background checks in Title 11. So I'd just like to make a request that election administration be invited to this meeting as well. Thank you. Ireya.
Hogasila. Sitsila. Honorable Winika, Honorable Vice Chair Slater. What are your
Chair, are
thoughts?
you asking us to modify the motion to include NBOs, or actually I'd say NBOs and the election administration? I would support that.
Okay. Honorable Winika. Honorable Edison Winika, do you concur in modifying the motion? Okay. Hogasila. All right. We have concurrence from the second, so we have a modified motion to accept the report, and then there would be collaborative meeting between Ms. Maestas, Mr. Matthew So, and Mr. Shamblin. And the ask then would be to include Navajo election administration. With ALA committee members, Mr. Mose, roll call vote, please.
Yes, sir. Honorable Paul Begay Jr. Green. Honorable Paul Begay Jr. votes green. Honorable Pernell Helona. Honorable Pernell Helona votes green. Honorable Carl Russell Slater.
Green.
Carl Russell Slater votes green. Honorable Charlene So.
I vote green.
Honorable Charlene So votes green. Honorable Edison J. Winika. Green. Honorable Edison J. Winika votes green. Chair, I vote of 5 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you. 5 in favor, 0 opposed, the chair not voting. Thank you, Dr. Lesky, Ms. Karen Malone, Ms. Emily Arvizo, and Mr. Shamblin. So we'll proceed on to let's see, 5B, Ms. Angelita Benali.
Yes, Mr. Chair. 5B is a report by the Navajo Department of Health Administration regarding the FY 2022 conditions of appropriation and legislative concerns per resolution CS-49-21. And the first one is the NDOH administration with NDOH should ensure all DOH legal settlements, liabilities, and interest payment related hereto are fully and timely paid to claimants as approved and directed by the DOJ. by the end of the second quarter, FY 2022, the director should provide a report to the Health, Education, Human Services Committee regarding such payout and ongoing liabilities, if any. And the presenters are Ms. Charlotte Francis, Senior Management Analyst of NDOH, and Dr. Jill Jim, Executive Director of NDOH. Mr. Chair. There is a second portion of this report by Doltech as well, and that their legislative concerns are that Doltech should prepare a report explaining FY 2021 funding shortfalls for utility payments, trash removal, and food shortages at Doltech's operated senior centers, as well as shortfalls for sufficient insurance coverage for all Doltech's operated vehicles. This report shall be presented to the Health, Education, Human Services Committee by the end of the second quarter FY 2022. Presenters for this particular report is Ms. Valerie Jones, a Health Service Administrator for Doltech, and Dr. Jill Jim, the Executive Director for Navajo Department of Health. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Benali. So is Ms. Charlotte Francis on the call? And Dr. Jill Jim.
Yes, good morning, Shana, and to committee members and those on the call. I am here, and Ms. Charlotte Francis should be also on the call.
If you would want to, Deja, if you would want to be the first one to do the presentation, then we can go to Ms. Francis, if you wish.
I think Ms. Francis and I agreed that I'll go ahead and do both Doltech and NDOH.
Go ahead.
I'm not sure if this calls for an executive session, depending on the information that was sent to you. Before I start, I don't know what your thoughts are.
Yes, and I had text the committee members on what their thoughts were. And in regard to that item, when we do get to it, I would ask, and Miss Angelita Benali, we could work with staff to set up a separate call-in number for an executive session, because it will entail personnel matters.
Okay, so for the items I'm reporting on right now, or is that a different agenda item?
Just for the agenda items right now.
Okay, so we'll await an executive or a new link.
When we get to that part.
Okay.
Regarding the personnel matter.
Okay, I don't have a lot of personnel matters, so I can proceed then.
The agenda item reporting on the condition of appropriation and legislative concerns.
Yes, so I can go ahead and proceed then?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. For legislative concern, you did, Michelle Morris did submit a written report to you yesterday regarding legislative concern with all legal liabilities, our settlements, interest payments, and those that are fully and timely paid to claimants and are as approved or directed by Department of Justice by the second quarter, and regarding any all such payouts. So on there, you'll see items that are still pending for payment. Under the Health Command Operations Center, we still have several items there to several vendors we are still seeking funding. Some of these items, I'm not sure if we were still wanting to check with an FMIS to see if these were paid out. There are 3 items on there for expenses related to sanitation. Some were related to the decontamination. Some were related to public health messaging and billboards. Others were related to water. One was related to a donor that had donated items to us, but decided to charge us the shipping costs in a large amount. And so those are items from the early surges in 2020. At that time, some of these items were in the CARES Act dollars and were not paid out on time, and accounts were closed, and that resulted in non-payment. And when we were trying to seek repayment of these items, we were denied in using our external funding. So there has to be some solution to this. I know we're continuing to work on these items. Some are at DOJ, and we're continuing to gather information about the charges for some of those that did and didn't have contracts as well for, I think, one of them, and that has been publicly and other, it has been brought up at other committee meetings regarding the decontamination. So as far as I know, we're continuing to work on these items. In 2020, we did receive $4 million to address the pandemic. And we thought at the time that the CARES Act dollars would be utilized for the response instead of utilizing general funds. And that was always the intention at that time. So there were some dollars, unused dollars, that were never carried over into 2021. And so in 2021, we didn't fully expend the general funding dollars that would have allowed us to pay for some of these bills. And so we didn't have any carryover in 2021. So a lot of these bills are actually related to 2020 that we're still trying to resolve. And so that's sort of the justification for these items. And we'll continue to work with the vendors and the existing dollars that I have to try to cover these expenses. For behavioral health and other programs that are listed on there for GSA late fees, these late fees are something that we're trying to work on. Some, I don't think there are correct balances on there for the CHR program. We're trying to determine what that balance is, and these were from, I think, years ago, where there was no communication or limited communication with GSA. And before I came into this position, the GSA bills were actually consolidated, and it was sent to one person. Somewhere along the way, in the last administration, they dismantled the process for paying out GSAs, and they decided to decentralize the bill or the bills and have programs paid for it, which actually has caused a lot of confusion. And these late payments, I think, are just that they still need to be addressed. I believe the amounts on there are not concrete. I think some of them are still being addressed, but we'll continue to follow through on the GSA. Another thing that I have learned through this process with having a GSA vehicle is that the Navajo Department of Health, I know I've mentioned to the managers that one solution to the issues with GSA is converting to tribal vehicles so that we can be in compliant and be required to follow Navajo Nation DPM, not DPM, fleet management policies and procedures for vehicles. And so, but there is, I did have a conversation with them about that, but as you know, the chip issue with vehicles, I think, is now a national issue. So I'll continue to pursue figuring out how to convert all of the vehicles possibly to tribal vehicles. That way we can communicate with risk management on insurance and vehicle maintenance under the tribe rather than the government. So one way to look at this change is to look at how the government can, the tribal government can sustain our own fleet, and which we should be doing as a program. So that's a solution to some of these issues regarding GSAs that I'm working on. And then the one program with the newspaper, I'm going to have to figure out these issues are possibly also related to late payment. I also understand that there is a shortage of staffing across tribal government due to retirees, and also individuals asking for payment for certain items, and they often are delayed, and then they begin to accrue penalties and fees. So the Navajo Department of Health, I would say during the pandemic, I have paid out a lot of late fees and penalties due to just the pandemic itself and additional resources going to CARES Act and now ARPA. We are already are strained in that way with our financial system. So I would suggest if there is any way to continue to support improving or supporting the capacity of our financial system so we can ensure that the bills are paid on time. I think a lot of that could be said that it is also the programs and also the finance system at fault at times, and I would agree with that. I know there's one program that really during the pandemic we did experience that just due to responding to the pandemic and experiencing staff shortages and turnovers during the pandemic. So that would be sort of my overall verbal report without really giving numbers. And I think you guys have their written attachment for the outstanding obligation and liabilities. So with that, Chair, I'll end my report there.
Thank you, Dr. Jim. Committee members have any comments or questions?
Sure.
Honorable Vice Chair Slater, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Dr. Jim, for the report. I'm reviewing the report right now. I had not seen it in writing yet, so I want to offer a couple comments very briefly because I have to get on a brief side meeting with the Speaker's office for about 15 minutes. Two unrelated issues. One, the Rock Point Senior Center, I really need you and your entire staff to focus on retaining and processing for the new cook position. We have a senior center supervisor there who has worked tirelessly throughout the pandemic and for much of that by herself to serve the elders in Rock Point. And she has just not gotten the support in hiring to have a driver and a cook. And we finally have a driver and now we have a cook, but I'm afraid our senior center supervisor is going to leave if we don't get the paperwork processed as soon as possible for new cook. And that that'd be a huge loss to central agency considering the staffing problems that we've had. And I'm worried that we would have to close the senior center there. So it does relate to the internal processes of Doltech and hiring and doing personnel actions. So if there's anything I can do in terms of moving things along with DPM, I just ask that you make sure everything gets over there as quickly as possible. And then second is in the request from the Fiscal Recovery Fund legislation that will allocate funding to Doltech and to the Department of Health. I'd like to hear now how that may alleviate some of the issues you just discussed, or they're not going to impact them at all. And then second, if your staff could develop, say, a one-pager to go over how those investments will really support Doltech's and the rehabilitation and reconstruction of senior centers. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Slater, Dr. Jim.
Thank you, Vice Chair Slater, for that question. Regarding the Rock Point situation, I can talk to Ms. Jones about that, but the only thing I do want to say is that there has to be some visibility and acknowledgement about the strain in our government right now. It is it's not only, it's probably almost every division that we possibly are dealing with some of the retirees and retraining staff, and there's a lot of vacant position because no one's applying. And it could be also related to the salary issues. People don't want to come back because the salaries are not enough. And I have advertised an accountant position for over a year. And the accountant I had left over a year ago, and now I have to make changes to figure out how I can staff that and maybe change the position on that. So it's been difficult, to be honest, to find individuals and staff and to process the paperwork. Even though you talk about DPM and all the finance stuff, it takes weeks and even months to make changes and get approvals for items. And I have expressed this to the other directors. And I think at this point, I'm just going to reiterate that there needs to be attention on this. If we are not hiring people and waiting for the Division of Public Safety to clear and provide a record, a background check for 2 to 3 months for people that we need tomorrow, that's a problem. And so we're being told, yes, it's really just not Doltech's. It's not the fault of just one. It's really a process system, and it's a capacity issue. And so when we're also told, like, wait a minute, we need this now, and we're being told, well, I'm backlogged 2 weeks. I won't get to you soon. But we have had these documents submitted months ago, so it doesn't impact payroll, or we need this person before they decide to take another job that has higher pay, or they're quicker to respond. We just don't have that right now. So I just kindly request that you guys actually look into all the processes that we have right now and how ARPA and CARES Act has impacted our governmental retirement. And it's still an ongoing problem because I'm still trying to staff here at the central office, and also addressing all of the issues that come along with that. So that would be my response to the senior center. And I just want to just encourage us to find a way and some solutions. And I think there are some solutions coming along the way. But of course, for me, I still focus on the pandemic at the Department of Health, and centers are still also ensuring that they're only doing curbside services and also home delivery services. And new vaccines are now available for those that are, and an additional dose is not made available for other older individuals past 55, and we haven't come to a determination of when we'll actually acknowledge and support that CDC's recommendation. So as we continue to lift restrictions, I think we'll look at how the capacity of the senior centers are. And I think that's always an issue. Senior centers are always going to be under budgeted. Having one driver, one cook, and one supervisor is not going to be ever enough. And I think that's something that we have to come together and do a plan on, which we haven't, as I have stated, with all these issues that we had with the pandemic, which we really haven't come out of yet. So we will continue to work with the Rock Point Senior Center, as you mentioned, but I think it's really a larger problem with senior centers not having the amount of staffing that they need. And I'm sure if in this year we can have that conversation to try to relook at how we look at the operations of senior centers, and that would be a conversation, but we're not prepared to have that conversation yet. But I just wanted to address the underlying issues and also some of the concerns that I have overseeing the Doltech program, and also working with Ms. Jones as much as we can. The second one with the FRF, the investments for senior centers is basically just, they're not large investments in the funding that was in there. Basically, the investment is just to have extra longstanding costs and repairs that have not been done. And so this has been an ongoing issue. We just didn't have these items be brought up in the pandemic because most of these were curbside and home delivery services were happening. But it is really to address longstanding repairs and maintenance issues. The senior centers, we are not in the position to renovate or construct new buildings. That's the position that we have had with Division of Community Development. So when chapters are asking for senior centers, new centers, they're going to have to consider if there's even funding for it, which there isn't. So any new additional centers that are being suggested by chapters across the Navajo Nation, the Doltech program will not have the ability to fund any operating or any personnel costs, because we are already at really at the bandwidth of what we need to do to operate these centers. So that would be one interpretation that I felt like was not clearly stated during the work session last week, that there wasn't clear discussion about the role of Doltech and senior centers in the ARPA dollars. So I would suggest, just to remind everyone, I think in this call and the committee, that we are only going to continue to focus on repairs and maintenance and not new centers. And just getting those buildings up to par is our goal for the funding for Doltech. As far as some of these obligations and liabilities, I can certainly, it is all COVID related. All of these are COVID related expenses. I know that CARES Act dollars and ARPA dollars allows for expenses to be recouped or charged to and paid for since the beginning of the pandemic. So that is a good idea, and maybe I will inquire, not maybe, I probably will inquire on that to see if these expenses that were accrued early on related to COVID can be justified for that, so we can go ahead and expend these dollars to support what has already been provided for the Navajo Nation. So I will end there. And Chair Slater, thank you for your questions.
Chair Salona.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Jim, for the response. Honorable Pernell Haluna.
Thank you, Chair, and committee members. Good morning, and good morning, Dr. Jill. Jim, I had a question on that, where I had not been apprised of the Nash City Senior Citizen. I guess it's been closed for over 6 months now. What's the status on that, and how soon before that gets reopened? And the second question I had was, you mentioned no construction on any senior citizen center until after the health order is canceled. because I was also wondering about the Twin Lakes Senior Center. They were supposed to be doing an addition on that. Is there any movement they're going there, or are we still going to be having to wait until the virus is brought down? Those are my two questions right now, Dr. Joe. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Dr. Jim.
Thank you, Delegate Halona, for those questions. The Nush City one, I think I will have to follow up with Ms. Jones on that. So I'll get back with you on that one. The one I said no construction, construction can resume. What I was saying is that Doltech is not in the business of new construction. So we're not, as an agency, we are contracted to provide meals to elders and deliver food and prepare meals. We're not contracted to provide construction services to build our own center. So that's what I was referring to. So I hope that's clear. So I'm saying that the program is not in the business of doing construction of new centers. So I hope that helps. Thank you, Delegate Halona, and back to you, Chair.
Deja, Honorable Halona, just remember.
Thank you, Chair.
Each of the projects more than likely has a project manager appointed through the Division of Community Development. So those two questions regarding those two facilities would have to go to more than likely Mr. Frank Adekai with the Division of Community Development.
I think Adekai or James.
James Adekai, I'm sorry.
Okay. Threw me off there. Okay.
Yeah.
I will address
it to him. If you were awake.
Okay. I guess I have another question, but it's not pertaining to the senior center. It's pertaining to the virus, I guess. I don't know when we're going to get into that, Chair.
Let's finish this portion with that item. Committee members, any follow-up questions? Now, this is respective of legislative concerns and conditions of appropriation. Those outstanding invoices, pre-existing for Dr. Jim when she was confirmed. So it's an ongoing item, and it's our, I guess, financial system that adds to those issues. Dr. Jim, regarding the GSA vehicles, are those the vans or are they the vehicles that are used for agency personnel?
Chair, yeah, the government GSA vehicles are only allowed under those that have federal contracts. So for the Doltech program, I believe they all lease in vehicles, so they're not. There's no GSA vehicles. These are related to the 638 Title I programs like CHRs, behavioral health, health education, and public health nursing, and Office of Environmental Health. So those are the ones that have GSAs. We do have GSAs for our Navajo Cancer Prevention Program because they have a CDC contract. We have GSAs for under the Epicenter because they also have CDC contracts. So those that have federal contracts are allowed to assume, I guess, a GSA vehicle to operate. And so we receive money from the government and we put money back in their pocket. So that's the way I interpret government vehicles. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Solana?
Oh, just a minute. I guess with that aspect, perhaps a question to Division of General Services with are the usage rates for Navajo Nation owned vehicles comparable or higher than the GSA lease rate? That would be something that would need to go as a question to the Division of General Services. Honorable Halona, you have a question.
Yeah, Chair, thank you for the time here, and as well as what I would want to find out is to get clear is that this report, we were talking about the shortfall last year as far as the Doltech is concerned. Is this still an ongoing concern that has not been taken care of from last 2021 funding? Chair?
Yes, Dr. Jim?
Chair, this is Dr. Jim and also Delegate Halona. Do you want me to go ahead and go into the next agenda item for Doltech to answer that question?
Thank you. I guess Honorable Halona is pushing us into the next agenda item. So go ahead.
Okay. You did receive a second report regarding the shortfalls, and there was a large paragraph, so I separated that into 3 items in the written report that I gave you. The first question was, or the first item that was asking for was an explanation of fiscal year 2021 funding shortfall for utility payments, trash removal, and food shortages at Doltech's operated senior centers. And our response is after reviewing expenditures in fiscal year 2021, there was no shortfalls for utility payments, trash removal, and food shortages. And for item B, there was another question about explanation of shortfalls for sufficient insurance coverage for Doltech's operated vehicles. And the same response after reviewing expenditures for fiscal year 2021, there was no shortfalls for sufficient insurance coverage. So those would be the responses. I think when shortfalls mean there were items that we needed but couldn't pay for. But I think all of the utility payments, trash removal, and things, when we hear of, there wasn't any shortfalls for food in 2021 because during the pandemic, we did support Doltech with our general funding for food throughout the pandemic, getting them to support additional food for seniors or elders in the community as well. And then I think when we hear of utility issues, trash removal issues, there is funding for it. It's just that there is a process, like I mentioned, the process of paying and streamlining that and making sure we pay vendors on time, and then making sure our 164 packets there were changes that you did hear about last year where we were consulted the last minute, where they had asked us that we shouldn't be paying out with a certain procurement option, and now we have to do a contract, and that was done at the very last minute, causing the ripple effect of the trash issues. So it is our internal processes. I think we need to continue to focus on and determine what areas of improvement do we need regarding payment and submitting invoices. And we're continuing to work with the agency supervisors to do that. But like I mentioned, right now, we are continuing to experience delays at times getting our paperwork processed. And it could be, like I said, at the fault of the program and the system itself, where I feel like we are slightly dealing with those delays. And so, but overall, there wasn't a shortfall. It's just the process of making those payments, I think, just alerts people that maybe think there is a shortfall. But as long as there is that prepaid contract that we receive and we don't revert, there's always funding in there for operating expenses. So that's the two items for A and B. And for C, it's not really related to the shortfall, but it is related to asking the Doltech program to consult with DOJ regarding fixed costs and just actually just determining if that's something that can be put into the fiscal year 2023 comprehensive budget. And right now, as we know, supplemental funding is, there is a moratorium on supplemental funding, so we will not request any supplemental funding for this year until that's lifted. Otherwise, fixed costs is, as you see in the report, or these are costs are incurred for the operation from the BIM, I guess I could say, incurred for the operation of the overall Navajo Nation government and exclude capital fixed costs. Fixed costs generally include outlays for insurance, utilities, rent, debt service, and other commitments. On the second page of the report for Doltech, you'll see based on the fixed cost definition for items that were mentioned earlier regarding shortfalls, utility payments, insurance coverage, and trash removal can probably qualify as fixed costs for fiscal 2023 comprehensive budgets. Items that are not considered fixed costs are food, personnel, communication, office and art supplies, kitchen equipment, supplies, mileage, charges, media, HVAC, and trainings were items that weren't probably considered as fixed costs. So that is the end of my report for the shortfall question. So back to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, committee members and Dr. Jim. Appreciate that presentation. Committee members, any follow-up questions?
Chair, Mr. Toth.
Oh, Sache.
Can I emit some comment on this matter, sir?
I'm recognizing you because you're the chair of the Navajo Nation Council on Aging. Go ahead, Sache.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Daniel So Arnable, and all the rest of the committee. I appreciate for giving me this time to say a few words about Delta. My concern is, why does the center itself running out of money to purchase paper plates for the Home D? This happened last month. The program or the driver called me and said, we need a plate. We're out of plates. We need some plates so we can do the home delivery. No, just to call me. So I gave them 150 plates. They were in the package. I bought this from Sam's Club from Albuquerque that I have on hand. And then the following week, we had donated another one, the same thing. So Dr. Jim Jill, Casimir Lake, what I'm talking about. And what happens, hold on now. I'm not asking for reimbursement. I'm just saying that there is a problem how this is being managed at Eastern Agency, because the person in charge is in the window lock. We need somebody there at agency, cast up in to Eastern Agency. And also in the last third week of April, we will have NCOA meeting again and trying to reestablish we don't mind donating, but sometimes we have to do, help the senior center.
Dr. Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Toth, for that comment, and thank you for all that you do for the aging council members. And I look forward to meeting with you guys when you guys come here to the department again. And I know you mentioned this at the Eastern Agency Council meeting as well. And I will follow up with Casimir Lake with the Health Services Administrator. The only thing I could state is if they could actually try to notify us of the process for those early and in advance. That's probably what I would need to work with. So I would have to try to just figure that out. So there are issues, like I said, with the controller and the items that we work on with vendors. So when there is a back order on those items that I was just informed. And so when there's a back order, we can't really receive the items in a timely manner. So it appears that for that situation, we're going to have to continue monitoring the vendors and making sure the senior centers reach out to another senior center to get plates too on the, I guess you can say, just don't be silent. They need to reach out to the agency supervisor to make sure, because they usually do that. I'm aware of that. And I've seen conversations when another center runs out of supplies, they ask a neighboring center or from another agency that might have some that are in stock. So I think we just need to make sure that the senior centers are communicating with their agency supervisors and their colleagues within their area. So I hope that doesn't happen again, but I'll make sure that we follow up with them to make sure that they communicate. Chair, back to you, and thank you, Mr. Toth.
Thank you, Dr. Jim. Supply chain issues, what Doltech is experiencing. So we'll see how that comes. And is there a chance for a second vendor availability?
Chair, we'll look into that. This is Dr. Jim. Thank you. And we'll let you know.
Okay. Okay. Committee members?
Chair Solana.
Honorable Pernell Halona, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to let Dr. Jim know that I did too run into the same situation that Mr. Holt had as well. And I did the same thing to go to Sam's Club and bought 2 packages of 150 plates each. And so I delivered those to the Tohatchee Senior Citizen Center, as well as they needed some lights at the Twin Lakes Senior Center. And so I had to buy some lighting for them as well. And I don't know why they didn't go to their supervisor or anything like that, but I just wanted to let you know that I went ahead and did that to purchase those lighting for them, and also the plates too, and I just let it go because we were having trouble with funding. Chair.
Okay.
For your information.
All right. Yeah, and I think those issues, they periodically make the appearance at the chapter meetings and at the planning meetings. And depends on the community how they respond. And sometimes it doesn't come to the level of the attention of the delegate. So I guess programmatically, we just see what we can get rolling, then keep rolling. Committee members, and Miss Angelita Benali, legislative advisor.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
This request to have an executive session. Do we have to suspend the floor rules to amend the agenda to include an executive session?
You would have to a member would have to motion to go into executive session. I do have the Zoom call ready for a different number for the executive session.
Chair,
Thank you, Ms. Benali.
Chair,
Is that on? Yes.
Yeah, this is Delegate Paul McGay at this chair.
Oh, yeah.
We were talking about that, and I think we need to stay with the agenda like today and put this matter on another time specifically for that, possibly the next meeting. Chair.
Sheila, it's at the discretion of the committee. If you do not want the executive session, then we'll maintain the agenda, and the chair is open for a motion to accept the report provided by Dr. Jill Jim.
Chair, I motion.
So, Honorable Charlene, so motions to accept the report, and then the second by, is Halona backing off and allowing Honorable Paul Begay to second the motion?
Yes. That's a challenge. He's challenging me, so I beat him.
Okay. Now you guys don't get in a fight over at that BNF conference room. Okay, Sheila, so we have a motion and a second to accept the report. There was a verbal report and submission of a written report. With ALA committee members. With that, if there's no other question or discussion, then Mr. Mose, let's take it to a vote.
Yes, sir. Honorable Paul Begay Jr.
Delegate Paul McGay votes green.
Honorable Paul Begay Jr. votes green. Honorable Pernell Halona. Green. Honorable Pernell Halona votes green. Honorable Carl Russell Slater. Green. Honorable Carl Russell Slater votes green. Honorable Charlene So.
I vote green.
Honorable Charlene So votes green. Honorable Pernell Halona. Honorable Edison Dewanika. Green. Honorable Edison Dewanika votes green. Chair, a vote of 5 in favor, 0 opposed.
Okay, thank you. Committee members, 5 in favor, 0 opposed, the chair not voting. That brings us to item 6, New business. A is Angelita Nolly.
Yes, Mr. Chair, you have your number 6A, number 6 new business A legislation, number 048-22. And it's an action relating to the Resource and Development, Health, Education, and Human Services, Budget and Finance and Navajo Committees and the Navajo Nation Council, allocating $29,216,453 in citizen funds to Navajo Land Nursing Homes Incorporated for the construction and operation of a veterans nursing home, approving the Navajo Warriors Home Expenditure Plan pursuant to 12 NNC sections 2501 through 2508. The legislation has gone through the 5-day comment period, and the after the Health, Education, and Human Services Committee considers this legislation, it'll move on to the Budget and Finance Committee as referred. And the document is intact, and it has the Exhibit A, which is a Navajo Warriors Navajo or Home Expenditure Plan. And then the comments, it did receive some comments, and two comments, and they are attached to the legislation. And also on, so there are 4 comments in all that were received regarding this legislation. Mr. Chair.
Motion, Monica. Second.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Nolly. Committee members, Honorable Edison Winika motions to adopt the legislation, second by Honorable Pernell Halona. Do we have, I forgot to ask, do we have sponsor Honorable Vice Chair Slater on the call?
Yes, Chair.
For the benefit of the folks on the call, just provide us some aspects of this particular legislation. Intent and purpose.
Thank you very much. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, committee members, for the opportunity to present this legislation. Legislation 4822 will establish an allocation to the Navajo Land Nursing Home Incorporated to construct a Navajo veterans home. And this will be the first of its kind on the Navajo Nation. I don't know if it will be the first of its kind in Indian country, but this committee has been very progressive and innovative in supporting healthcare for our people, and then specifically advocating for veterans issues. So I recognize the work of the committee for getting us to this point. I'm the grandson of 2 World War II veterans, and I have numerous family members who have served in the U.S. military. My father was a civilian employee of the Air Force and worked in the Pentagon. And ever since I was little, I've appreciated sacrifice and service to this country. And as I've grown as a person and as a leader, I've realized the adverse healthcare, the adverse impacts to our veterans when they come back to the reservation and they don't have appropriate resources to consider or to move on with their lives when they come home. And then when they get to, say, retirement stage and need assistance in a long-term care setting, that they have been denied access of that by the federal government. So there are a lot of policies and procedures that the feds have to allocate their resources on the Veterans Administration side, and it disadvantages Navajo. What we have here is an opportunity to exercise our sovereignty using our resources to support our veterans. And to that end, this process began over, I think, a decade ago in
planning for such an endeavor. So at the time, Mr. Claw, who is on the line with his board, that includes Mr. Jonathan Hale, the former delegate on the council, our leader, Ms. Cecilia Sandoval, who I believe is the board chair, and then Victor Joe Jr. Those are the members of the board, and then their attorney, Mr. Atsi. So they began the process of planning, designing a veterans home here on Navajo. And when I became a delegate, I had a lot of veterans in my community who wanted me to effort. They had seen it stall out, and for them, it was one of the highest priorities for them within the veterans issues that they support. So I took this up, and I've been trying to work with Navajo Land Nursing Home and their board. The board has been exceptionally supportive. I think they're very engaged and innovative in providing more resources to our people. Our committee has supported them in receiving a 638 designation for contracting with the Indian Health Service. My hope that the funding mix that supports the nursing home will also support the veterans home. And once we get funding in 2 years, hopefully earlier, but in 2 years for long-term care under IHS, we'll be able to further expand the services that are provided at the future veterans home and at the nursing home. I think this will be a huge benefit when we go to DC and when we go to the state, that we can highlight a $30 million investment or a $29 million investment that we're making to serve our people in the absence of their support. And we need the state and we need the Veterans Administration to step up and provide additional resources, at this facility and at other facilities on Navajo that I envision to come. This will be the first that will serve all of Navajo, but we know the need out there, and we could easily have one of these in each agency. So perhaps after we prove the model, we can either advocate for more funding for additional veterans homes in each agency, or seek other engagements with the Veterans Administration and with IHS and with the state. So at this time, I would like to recognize, I guess Mr. Claw will be my agent. And Chair, I think we're allowed to have 2 agents, right? So I'll recognize him to offer any comments, and then from there, we're happy to answer any questions the committee may have, but considering the wide support from the committee and the council, I think a lot of committee members have already invested themselves in researching the legislation, and we're really just happy to answer any sort of concerns or questions at any level. So, Mr. Claw, I'd like to hand it off to you, Chair, if you'd be willing to recognize him.
Thank you.
I am online, committee, Mr. Slater.
So let me go to Mr. Jonathan Hale.
Oh, your office?
Oh yeah. Situation that bagi iki to tai konta no sonegi to tai no sagi. Ja det helt to media konshitoch nana stage touching in slot to konjabashis chain hanagani to cheki ani the signal to tai kok be ja it then need to let other konshitna ash Mr. Claw ekaki nanashin lenegi ya sato to khania do hot aben da ha ale ado brato hot a ikona state egi ya hot a pe ponet zago ya hol just ko ide hot on so baban siskation hat ana snegi to hadina da hot a ben da hat ala lan hot a bikete I to sato hot a isa da dis on hat anlegi katishigi kunzailo ado large stage hot base of an and that joy agita hot the hegi ado hit ada ila the ida biya hanal what can no hot ako kade kujo iti nahat lenigi besmas ana betaton dot to hit on khayan sikis to list to I down hot on mission lenigi bike at the hot in to Italia shana Italia ako hunzait to hot la last so in lenigi ye hanat to anle code inidia code suin lenigi Dr. Jill Jim ajahan lenigi hilishani le Doltech Department of Aging and Long-Term Care Services. Jo ajo hot Chinle Nursing Home. I died what to hot quacky. Hatwido sani do salaf so esto ajo hot quacky bahas to be tasting to ba haya to ne hot sad nigite eslana. Nishiti kwete hana hot quacky hinanish emails nigi to hot twido sani. Nikit Shane Hinale, Amato, Jane, Clin Venegi, Ada Bikida, Disti, Johot I call Shigi, Dosh the Hagi, Tata, Dahot Abatas Ada, Johot I call Bahata, the Dosh Janan, that il in lay the Nebekayas, Ago, Tojico, Eholola, a person in the Saholo, Adoi, Waho Shata Achko Nana, Sholo, Adoi, was Nana Payson. Hot ada jigo la hot combatant has do your tobit house George ahunam a sheep be torge do a hot on has angi abet the huye do hot cordon in hat the negi honorable Carl Slater jo hot had the ane ne jo hold show the yard eco hot cobic edit do she kodota hatol jish John hat anegi tik in the but ado quacky take in long ado hat egate 80 foundation the snegi a hot order because this or because the cargo in the hot iron has ado lishne the first of its kind on Navajo to quacky yeta hat see so a hot end so la na when sin it is a last for battle list or hot up hat edo lishne Adishigi or what are she been kissing the nation hat no senegi jo oversight are just last for because that no each veterans what are behad that it's to what are so yen the so we want a veterans health facility we want our own veterans hospital instead of going to Payson instead of going to Albuquerque jo we'll have it on Navajo jo elan na sin and Hashinin Lenegik at Lata. She took that nada banana should they send the other banana as the hegi trashing ade called ego that I can't see case of course. The Kujisa the Nadit I higi big at the hegi do on Hinanas or hegi back in so the shne donate Nijishi quire and hat the negi do quite larger Aj banana she used the negi Mr. Wayne Clark to Ajigi bitch that need Edo Yen Kisnan. The hot hold shigi, or sweet or sunny, Ajapa, because they see the Bahianegi, Ado de 638, Nana Liagi, Baki Winson, Adok Adin Lake in the Nahal Guide, the federal budget to Equaki changes, added the Anandalia amendments to identify nursing home facilities and the allocation of annual fundings with the Department of Health and Human Services. What up, Aliagoshi? In general, that's more opportunities in other communities to go 638 so services closer to home. A question that to the next committee. I don't lay na be Adoshi which nana. Summer session the shita Shitato Nato Ahun totally okay.
I had last in a it's not us. Mr. Wayne Claw. No, not hold these.
Koshi, that's Tosash. Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you.
What is
I can't deny to Health and Education, Human Services Committee, Quebec, she yate, it's an adon what you yate, Bashé Kisparahazan Ashi Tani Tinhito Ni Nana Chije Ya Tanis Zanida Etapahish Naledat Oge Eshe Chi that Eda Ebeslijan that Esachin Kuyat O Do Hehe Niti Kodeshan I need Mr. Hale Shitna Ash. So board members that so they run up and that she's nish. Ladies at the yes they suit and then they overstand is that's a humble in at only chin hole. I could Arabic shit all board members and late I shown the back and that no could come the hobby the national shikwa. I could knew what at all and say case I could and then you should lang ash in the need ashes actions and lattice. And need such a time with Elia and loaded out at Kenji chat no. I could add now I could all your bashing it though. Shizaya though. Those I should such night and long is the last so does Lee could I need all eve. The special job by Koshidi. I call Nakis Kandal. That he can't zakwe. Veteran. What an honest. Last week, like he can't zakwe. Veteran. Quite an honest. In the nursing home. I could knew what a lot of well known that you can there. Cachon. The Radiant Navajo Nations under 638 BIA, the case manager and Lenny, which you had a consequence. I could knew what a shan't I by Joe Pie. I bishop a needle, the shisha a needle benia. I call Aben Natcha, Shipajo Pie, but not need to cut all her yin rated career in war, yato, Vietnam veterans and Leonard oh, you cut. Sonny, those tweeters lead their elders down. And I always say that they qualify under this policy, 93-638, be able to afford to be able to have them stay here. Because that, that's up hand in hand, and they listen to the question. In it, I get 638 at the Lunjundo Shanantaiko. Instead of the Nishi Ani, oh, the Schneedler and head on hold me that he Ninant Abbott has me Donana, the youth aid of Jesus, the Holni, David the Holni, at Ashdod that don me son, those 2 years of veteran the Schneedler. But that's my belief, because you in Shla Ajahut out. I could Nishinoshi, should not only Sini that for the Katicha. Instead of these needs, but Hojon of Benia. They could always come back and say, well, I have a home to go to. And I'm always been saying, I'll be willing to help complete this. I'll be here to help all the way till maybe till I make retirement. And the shuttle they spend the other shifty. So now you're to what those little actually Shnanta Maslini Kodani. Donan had other that those kitchen and eat item. Cut an idiot this morning. Kept the house there. The Veterans Agency done Linny and Ray Coyote Canyon the Monday go. He's now dealing with that no who not on Monday go ajo. Ado sa na ship brought they don't know another holiday and Ray Tuba City there don't know. Nana get that hood so they don't sa. So I'm willing to provide the information to them. I'm willing to go out there and meet with them and explain to them what we're doing. Because AEC been yahan negi ba ado which mo they shling. Ado yoj is it a new hajo bishkan no yat eto kunso. Kushla kot oyinda this kid ko hiash nantao without elshkato luhnikato luhnika bakati jatidad. A hiat or shidant I quite get oh Charles I hun proko.
Gusila, committee members, any questions, comments? Mr. Mose, let's take it to a vote.
All right, sir. Honorable Paul DeGay Jr. Honorable Paul DeGay Jr. votes green. Honorable Pernell Halona. Honorable Pernell Halona votes green. Honorable Carl Ruffin Slater. Honorable Carl Ruffin Slater votes green. Honorable Charlene So. Honorable Charlene So.
I vote
Honorable
green.
Honorable Charlene So votes green. Honorable Edison J. Wanika. Honorable Edison J. Wanika votes green. Sherry, a vote of 5 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you. Committee members, thank you.
Okay.
5 in favor, 0 opposed, the chair not voting. With Ayla, Chile, we'll,
Have a good day.
Thank you. Committee members, that takes us to old business, there being none. Close of meeting. Committee members and Ms. Benali, at the request of Honorable Herman Daniels, we had scheduled a work session for Doltech. I can't recall what day we designated. And if need be, we could vote on that date. And committee members, it seems like, number one, we have the continuing dilemma of how to get personnel hired in a timely manner. We heard from Division of Community Development, and we heard from Department of Health. And there seemed to be some policy statements issued by Department of Personnel Management to shorten the processes. Perhaps a two-part work session could be convened, committee members. I'll look to the committee's discretion and decision. The other is the continuing matter of the court case respective of school board apportionment. Those three items, I think, would be certainly matters that are unresolved, and we need to address them as soon as possible. In a short aspect, check your calendar. Look at, let's see.
Sure. What do you think about doing the staff development and training at 9? I don't anticipate that taking more than 3 hours. And we could cover these and just do a working lunch and work through on April 6th. Otherwise, I'd suggest doing it the 7th, because that's the first Thursday of the month, so we should not have Navi.
Mr. Chair, members of the Health Education Human Services Committee, can I check to see when a future NABI session might be scheduled? Because I do believe that there was one, I think I overheard Mr. Rico mention the 7th. So let me check with him first. Is that okay? Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Members of the Mr. Rico indicated that the next NABI meeting is on April 7th.
I thought the regular meetings were the 2nd and 4th of NABI. So the 7th would be a special meeting?
Yes, that's correct. And he did send a reminder that the April 4th, next Monday, there's a possible Navajo Nation Council special session, provided that enough signatures are on the petition.
Okay, committee members, here's open to motion to do a work session on April 6th, 9 a.m. Cover staff training and development, Doltech and DPM.
Here, I'll make that my motion, that we'll combine it all into the April 6th session.
Thank you, Honorable Vice Chair Slater.
Paul Begay will second that.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second to schedule. Anything else? Let's see. And if there's something that comes up, keep your schedule open for April 12th, just in case, because we spring session in April, that eliminates a regular meeting for HES, so we could schedule it on the 12th or later in the month. The reason I'm looking at the 12th is legislation that may also have to go Well, the 12th, the 13th is a regular meeting. Let's just leave it at that. Thank you. I'm getting ahead of myself. So with the motion, Mr. Mose, roll call vote, schedule that work session.
Sir. Honorable Paul Begay Jr.
Honorable Paul Begay votes green.
Honorable Paul Begay Jr. votes green. Honorable Pernell Halona.
Hello, votes green.
Honorable Pernell Halona votes green. Honorable Carl Russell Slater.
Green.
Honorable Carl Russell Slater votes green. Honorable Charlene So.
I vote green.
Honorable Charlene So votes green. Honorable Edson J. Wanika. Honorable Edson J. Wanika votes green. Chair, we have a vote of 5 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you. Committee members, 5 in favor, 0 opposed. The chair not voting. Committee members, there's that signing ceremony that's going to occur at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. I cannot be present. I had already scheduled a meeting with NDOT and the Vol County Roads addressing school bus routes that are utilized by 7 school systems in the 3-chapter area of Oriole, Counselor, and Ojo Encino. With that, committee members, we are through with the agenda. Chair's open for a motion to adjourn.
Chair.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Before we motion to adjourn, one other date we need to remember. I remember as a committee, we were contemplating on attending Richville, Salsavir commencement exercises. That date is on May 26th, on a Thursday. So just a heads up on that, if we're still planning to do that. Idea with that, Salsavir at noontime and Richfield at 5 o'clock in the evening. The same day. Idea about this, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Paul Begay. I'll put it on the calendar. Committee members? Anybody else? Aquashila.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay. Chair recognizes the motion by Honorable Paul Begay to adjourn, second by Honorable Edison Wanika. Motion to adjourn involves no question discussion. Mr. Mose, roll call vote, please. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Honorable Paul Begay Jr.
Paul Begay votes green.
Honorable Paul Begay Jr. votes green. Honorable Pernell Halona.
Green.
Honorable Pernell Halona votes green. Honorable Carl Russell Slater.
Green.
Honorable Carl Russell Slater votes green. Honorable Charlene So. Honorable Charlene So. Honorable Edson J. Wanika. Green. Honorable Edson J. Wanika votes green. Honorable Charlene So.
I vote green.
Honorable Charlene So votes green. Chair, you have a vote of 5 in favor, 0 opposed, adjourned at 1:13 p.m.
Thank you, committee members. And take care of yourselves, travel safe. we'll see you if the special session petition makes 13. I'll have to call in because I had also convened a meeting on power line extensions on the 4th also. So I'll have to call in on that day should a special session occur. But ALA committee members, thank you for the participation. Thank you to all the folks on the call and even the folks that talked on the agenda items. Johnny Celine Hot ALA committee members, we are adjourned.
Angie or Mose, are you there?
Hey, Brent, the meeting is over.
Everybody's probably just walked away.
I guess.
So.
Hey, Derek, I'm here. I'm listening, but thank you. Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you. So Derek, we have a work session on the 6th.
Yes, that's what they said.
Okay, so we'll probably do the same thing. We'll prepare a report and send it to you once we find out what the agenda items are.
You're talking about the work session for HESI, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
For Doltech? For Doltech.
Yeah, for Doltech.
Okay. All right.
Hakone.
Okay, we'll see you. Have a good day. Bye.